I am Robert Strand. I have the privilege to be the executive director of the Nordic Center at the University of California, Berkeley. Did you know there was such a thing? No, we just launched it this year. And we're quite excited about that. And we are so pleased to be part of this wonderful event. Of course, Nordic Innovation Summit, welcome back. Innovating for a Common Future. Our Nordic Center, we share a common friend here. There's that wonderful Barbara Osher gallery that's just right over there. And Barbara Osher is an individual behind the scenes that made the Nordic Center at the University of California, Berkeley possible. I know she wishes that she could be here today, so I bring her greetings to all of you fine Nordic-minded individuals. And I personally couldn't think of just a better place, frankly, in the world for the Nordic Innovation Summit than here, the National Nordic Museum. And I just want to remind all of us these wonderful values that the National Nordic Museum represents, that are also Nordic values: openness, sustainability, social justice, and innovation. And of course, we're talking about innovation today. But when you talk about Nordic innovation, you're talking about innovation that has openness, sustainability, and social justice embedded in it. And I would argue, as many others would, the world needs Nordic innovation. And I am so grateful that this summit has come together as it has. There is a purpose, a deep-seated purpose in Nordic innovation for our common future. And that relates, of course, to the sustainable development and the definition. And the former Prime Minister of Norway, Gro Harlem Brundtland, development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. That is a beautiful definition. And as an academic dork, I come upon thousands of definitions, and they're rotten normally, and I am the perpetrator of a lot of them also. That is a beautiful definition. Development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. Comes from Norway, as does the individual that I now have the privilege to hand over the stage to, the ambassador to the United States from Norway, Ambassador Anniken Krutnes. And Ambassador, I had the privilege to host you at the University of California, Berkeley, just a couple weeks ago. So with that, I'd like to welcome the wonderful ambassador from Norway to the United States. Please, join me.
Thank you. Thank you for that introduction. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it's an honor to be here, and it's such a pleasure to be back in Seattle with friends. And congratulations once again to the team at the Nordic Museum for hosting this summit in this fabulous building. And the title of the summit this year is Innovating for Our Future. And that's a very good title, I think. It makes you reflect on what you want from the future. What should the future look like, and what can take us there? And what do we want from the future? I think all of us want safety. We want the future to be safe. And there are so many aspects of safety and security. Well, one of them is, of course, the physical safety, but we have economic safety, climate safety, cyber security. There are so many aspects to this. It should be prosperous. It should be sustainable. And we got an introduction to a very good definition of what is sustainable. Thank you for that from our old Professor Dr. Gro Harlem Brundtland. She also had another slogan, you know, think globally, but act locally. Do what you can here and now. And we want a future that is based on democratic values. And I think that is something we reflect, at least I do, more upon now than I did just a few months ago. And I must say that the new war in Europe scares me. And Russia's brutal attack on Ukraine is something that makes us reflect a lot of the world we live in. And in this challenging time, we're pleased to see that the United States again show leadership on the global stage. This war has actually brought, I think, US and Europe closer together, and the bonds between us Nordic countries and the US, as you know, are particularly strong, and they will be even stronger when Sweden and Finland join NATO. The US is, you know that, I say this every time I get a chance to come to a mic, I say US is Norway's most important ally. We've had a strong relationship since the war. We've had the security, defense cooperation, but you all know that we've been so close, so much longer than that. Started with the first immigrants from Norway coming here way ago. This morning I was, by the way, out at Boeing to look at one of the new P-8 aircrafts that is on its way to Norway to surveil our maritime area, which is 5 times as big as our land territory, where we are looking out for what's going on. Particularly, we are looking out for Russian submarines, and we find them with the good help of the P-8s from America. So that's how we work together. Today, I was supposed to talk about innovation and cooperation, and I think the key to a sustainable future is innovation. We need innovation, we need new technology to be able to fight climate change. We will never be able to reach our goals in the fight against climate change without working together and make our industries and our economies and our societies more sustainable. So a little bit about Norway. We have a target of a 50 to 55% reduction of carbon emissions by 2030 and a low emission society by 2050. That requires a fundamental innovation throughout our economy. And we have started. So a few examples. Within a span of just 5 to 6 years, 1/3 of our ferries will be electrified. And the best part of that is that it is working. The clean ferries are already moving people, cars and goods along the Norwegian coast day in and day out. I'm sorry, I was wrong. 1/3 is already. We spent the last 5 years on electrifying ferries, and 1/3 is already electrified. Soon we will also have our first ferry operating on hydrogen, and that will be another milestone in Norwegian maritime history. Another example is the ship Yara Birkeland, which started operating this year. The Yara Birkeland will provide autonomous zero-emission transport, and it transports fertilizer. Yara is the fertilizer company of Norway. So it will transport fertilizer between the factory in Porsgrunn and the closest port of shipment. This is groundbreaking technology. It's good for the environment, of course. Yara itself, one of the oldest industrial companies in Norway, is looking to produce clean ammonia to use in its own fertilizer production and as a fuel for vessels and cars. I also have to mention offshore wind. The Norwegian government has just launched an ambitious plan of creating 1,500 offshore windmills by 2040 in Norway. Those windmills will produce around 30,000 megawatts. Those of you who have no idea about what is a megawatt, I can tell you that 30,000 megawatt is more or less the same amount as Norway consumes annually. So that's quite a lot. And you know, we already have all the hydropower. We're 96% hydropower, so we are doing this as well. Some of this will, of course, be for export to Europe that desperately needs energy. Talking about offshore windmills, Norway has a steep continental shelf, and we need floating windmills. And we can do this because we take the expertise and the knowledge we have from the oil and gas sector offshore, and we use it in this new offshore wind sector. And we've studied and developed this complex technology now with floating windmills for years. And we're ready to do that, of course, here in the US as well. So those were some examples from Norway. And equally importantly, I think these sectors are areas where Norway and the US, and in particular Washington State, are already cooperating. And where we can look to working even closer together. We have a strong competition from Washington State when it comes to claiming the world's first hydrogen vessel. And it's exciting to see the ferry Sea Chance, built by All American Marine, being launched here in Washington, a hydrogen ferry. And I think that's a testament to how forward-leading our maritime communities are and why it is important that our maritime communities cooperate. And back to offshore wind again for a second. Norwegian companies are present already in the US market. Equinor was one of the first to get a license to develop offshore wind off the coast outside New York. And here on the West Coast, we know that there will soon be licenses on the West Coast for offshore wind. And we know that Norwegian companies, probably several of them, will contribute with their expertise and floating technology. So if you reflected over this, I talk a lot about the ocean. And that shouldn't be a surprise. Norway and United States are bound together by the sea and our closeness to the sea, and also culturally and economically, and again, particularly here in Washington State. Many Norwegians who came here took up work in the fishing sector or the maritime sector. And I have a favorite example of those who came here in the 1800s. And some of you who know me will guess who I'm talking about, because that's, of course, Miss Thea Foss. She was a pioneer. She arrived from Norway in the late 1800s, was one of the first women to start a business in the maritime sector on the West Coast. And those of you who live here, you know this. She founded Foss Maritime. And back then it was the biggest tugboat company in the region. And now you know Foss is a highly successful maritime company based right here in Seattle. Thea Foss was a Norwegian innovator. She brought her knowledge and her drive to the US, and she did what she was good at. Just like most Norwegians who settled in Washington and elsewhere in this country, we stuck to what we could, what we're good at. And that is exactly what Norwegian companies and entrepreneurs are doing today. From seafood to energy production, metal production, Norway invests, exports, and creates jobs in the United States. For me, there is no doubt that we need to work together across borders if we want to achieve the green transition. This administration in the US, the current administration, Biden-Harris administration, has very ambitious goals for a green transition in this country. And I think we need to partner up to achieve that here. Moving into a cleaner future, tackling the climate change, creating a sustainable economy is too important for us to rely only on the companies and technologies that we find within our own countries. We have to partner up. We need to use the best solutions available out there, especially among partners and friends. That is why the Memorandum of Understanding, the MOU between Innovation Norway, which is Norway's trade promotion agency, and the Washington State Department of Commerce is important. The memorandum is a tool that supports and drives innovation, knowledge sharing, and cooperation on issues such as electrification, new ocean technologies, and others between Norway and Washington State. This MOU and the cooperation between Norway and Washington's maritime clusters are already showing results. An example, Kongsberg, one of Norway's leading companies in the maritime sector, also located here in Washington, has recently entered into an agreement to use the digital technologies from Seattle-based startup IO Currents. So that's a close cooperation that is born here in Seattle. And I have to use this opportunity today to applaud the Washington State Department of Commerce, Innovation Norway, and Washington Maritime Blue and its cluster counterpart in Norway, the NCE Maritime Cleantech. Each of these organizations has demonstrated incredible work and achievements so far. Yesterday, some of you were here yesterday, and I was so happy to take part in the launching event for Corvus Energy and their new battery factory in the port of Bellingham. Corvus is a world-leading battery and fuel cell manufacturer, especially for the maritime sector. And we're proud to have their headquarters in Norway and see that they establish production here. They will have a significant footprint in the US with their factory in Bellingham, bringing technology, investment, and jobs. And I think that's a perfect example of what a Norwegian-American cooperation on the green technology and the green transition is all about. We cannot achieve our goals without our friends and partners. We cannot achieve our goals without innovation. And that is why it's important that we are gathered here today and talk about innovation for the future. So once again, congratulations to the Nordic Museum for a fabulous event. Thank you.